For females, our peak bone density occurs around age 26. So if you can do as much resistance training as you can leading up to that point, you can end up building a little bit more bone density.
Oh.
And then from that point onward, continuing with the resistance training, you're not going to improve your bone health or your bone density, but you can prevent it from dropping off as quickly.
Hello, everyone. Today we are here with Anna, my cousin, who is beautiful in every way. She is a mom, of course. She's currently pregnant, and she's a wife. She is a physical therapist, a pediatric physical therapist, and we're just going to be talking to her. I found that it's easier to just go with the flow, chat about everything, and then we'll see how this turns up in the end. So welcome, Anna.
Thanks for having me.
Yay. So first, just tell me about yourself, whatever comes to mind, and we'll start there.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you captured the big stuff. Right now, I think mom's kind of number one. Definitely, I only work part-time at this point, so I'm working 3 days a week, Tuesday through Thursday. And I work as a sports medicine physical therapist, so most of my kids are ages 8 to 18 or so, with the main focus probably closer to like the 12 to 16-year-old range. So I've been doing that for, about 8 years now, and it's what I wanted to do for a long time, or at least was in the mix of the things that I had considered for a long time, and have definitely enjoyed that. Finding a new balance between that and motherhood's been interesting, but we're figuring it out as we go.
I mean, that's cool, though, that you're able to do Tuesday through Thursday. It's not like up on today, off tomorrow, on today. I feel like that would be a struggle. What motivated you to become a PT, and then specifically pediatrics?
So my mom's actually, she was a physical therapist. She's retired now. So I knew of the profession through her. I knew growing up I never wanted to do exclusively an office job, just because I don't sit still that well. So I wanted something where I was up and moving at least for part of the day. So I had considered potentially medical school or veterinary school, but I like sleep. So those sort of came off the table with that. Especially the veterinary side, I was looking at large animal practice, and during birthing season for the cattle and everything, you don't sleep much. So mother brought me into some of that, but it worked out okay. And then I played sports my whole life. Gosh, as young as I can remember, I was playing with my brothers, my dad, and it just became a big part of who I was, at least through the end of high school. And that sort of transitioned over more to the fitness side of things after I wasn't doing as much from an organized sports standpoint. So I felt like I could relate to that area. I always really liked kids growing up. As I got older, I knew eventually I wanted to be a mom. And then from a physical therapy standpoint, kids are just so resilient. Not that all adults are jaded, but many of them are. And most kids, they have things they want to get back to. They want to be able to play with their friends. They want to be able to go outside. They have hobbies they want to do, things they're interested in. And so many of them are just a little bit more invested in the process. And it felt more rewarding to me, because they just, for the most part, they did want to get better. Sometimes on the adult side, you end up, and sometimes, it's very rewarding on that side too. But with that, you can end up with people who, they just like coming to physical therapy because it's their social hour, or it's just sort of something that they've embraced as part of their identity. And most kids don't want that. They want to go have a good life without us as soon as possible, which is great.
So they put in the work.
Usually, yeah. At least in clinic. Maybe not once they go home, but at least in clinic, they tend to work harder and tend to have more goals related to getting better. So it just felt more rewarding. Plus, they're wonderfully weird. I love that kids are goofy and they say things that are just like, where did that come from? So they're entertaining and it's fun. You can be a little bit more silly and lighthearted, and even with tougher diagnoses, it makes it a little bit lighter. So I definitely appreciated that side of it too.
Yeah, I like that. I used to want to be a pediatrician, but of course the school.
Oh yeah.
I was
like,
like,
you've been in school forever.
the school, like you said, the sleep, and yeah, Anyway, that didn't
Yeah,
happen.
medical school is a whole nother step up. My sister-in-law, she's a neurologist, and there was nothing better for reinforcing my decision than seeing her go through medical school. And I was like, I think that wasn't for me.
Yeah,
And
no,
she's doing great now. It's paying off for sure. But man, that's a tough several years.
but rewarding. But anywho,
Yeah, absolutely.
so what's been like the coolest or the most challenging but yet rewarding case that you've handled?
Oh my gosh, that'll take me a while to come up with.
Well, what comes up the top of your head?
We get so much variety. Um, so we've had a couple more, like outside the sports medicine domain,
Mm-hmm.
because we do have a separate physical therapy department. Our neuropeds department sees, I think, typically more what you would think of for like pediatric physical therapy. So kids like with developmental delays and really significant impairments in mobility, that sort of thing. But as those kids get older, especially like older teens, we tend to get them in our clinic. So I think part of what's made it stand out more is that I've had a couple kids just with diagnoses that are very different from what we typically get.
Mm-hmm.
So like I had one kid, it's called osteogenesis imperfecta. So basically there are a couple different variants, but a brittle bone disease, if you've heard of something like that. So they fracture really easily with things that typically wouldn't cause bone breaks in healthy kids. So like one of my girls, I've actually had three now who have had that. And one of my girls at the age of 6 had more than 50 fractures. And she was just so resilient and so motivated. And I remember at one point she was hanging onto the parallel bars or things that they can use for support for their hands. And we were working on getting her walking a little bit better. And like whole body was shaking. And I asked her, hey, do we need to take a little break and recover some? And she's gritting her teeth and she's like, no, I can do it. Let me keep going. And just to see that level of determination and grit in a kid that young, it like, man, it really it sticks with you.
Yeah, I know. I'm
Yeah,
crying just like thinking about it.
right.
And
Yeah.
so because they fracture easy, like what are their options to kind of avoid it, or like
Mhm.
how do they go about life to keep it from happening?
So it depends what type of OI you have. So some of the kids, like one of them, she had more of a bony overgrowth issue. So she was still more susceptible to fractures. But one of the unfortunate things was she would have like bony growth into where tendons come in and attach to the bone. So like up into her Achilles tendon, into basically any ligamentous or tendon insertion. So she had it growing into her plantar fascia. And if you've heard of heel spurs,
Yeah.
that's basically what you get with that sort of thing. So for her, unfortunately, she didn't really have any good options. It was basically just try to maintain as much mobility as you can, as long as you can, because in her case, if you went in and tried to surgically remove those overgrowths, her body would just go into overdrive and grow more bone. So there are some variations like that are just, man, they're tough. And then my girl that had so many fractures, that tends to be the worst type. It just, so many lower energy, like she would be just walking, not even, do anything, notice anything, would gradually have increased pain and, go in and find another fracture. So those are some of the ends that you can have. But I have another kid. She's fractured a handful of times, and hers is less severe, I guess I would say. So like in her case, basically you try not to do really risky things, but it's hard because life is all about risk reward, right? So you try to strike the balance that the patient, and in my case in pediatrics, that the family is comfortable with as well. So try and as best you can to let her live as normal life as possible and do the activities that are meaningful to her, but as much as you're able to, try to minimize risk of falls. So her injuries typically were things not necessarily like major impact or anything like that, but typically when she had fractures, it was like, okay, this thing happened, ran into this thing, fell off of this thing. So it was a little bit more clear. So in her case, it's a bit I mean, of course, it's still a very difficult diagnosis to live with, but
Mm-hmm.
in her case, there were more solutions and ways to kind of work around and manage it. But it's
Okay.
definitely a tough thing to have for sure.
And there's nothing like they could take to like reinforce their bone or anything like that. It's
So
just
they
part of their
do
genetics.
infusions. I'm not actually sure if that can be done for each type, but at least for a couple of the types that I've had, they end up doing regular infusions that help some. I'm not actually sure what the research is as far as how effective it is for improving bone strength. For a lot of the kids, as with any of us, resistance training is a big factor in bone health.
Okay.
So, as much as they're safely able to, trying to get them under a heavier load, get them as strong as possible. But especially like for females, our peak bone density occurs around age 26. So if you can do as much resistance training as you can leading up to that point, you can end up building a little bit more bone density.
Oh.
And then from that point onward, continuing with the resistance training, you're not going to improve your bone health or your bone density, but you can prevent it from dropping off as quickly. So, that's one of the things that we try to do for those kids as well. But honestly, a lot of the strength and resistance stuff for them is more so just to keep them mobile and being able to do what they need to. But yeah,
Okay.
there aren't any great things that I'm aware of that, like, nothing fixes it. And I'm not sure to what degree the infusions that they get make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's pretty much standard practice, but like I said, I don't know the research on that as far as how effective it is.
Wow. Okay. And to draw back attention to what you said about women being able to or possibly, you said, improve or grow their bone density before the age of 26, and then with
Mm-hmm.
resistance training. So what does that look like? What do you mean by resistance training?
So like heavy weights, basically.
Okay.
You can get I think you can get some of it just from like impact activities too. But the primary focus is like machines, free weights, heavy load, and that helps a lot with bone health.
Okay. Are there specific exercises that you feel would be the most effective?
Typically, what they're thinking of is more for like lower body weight bearing
Okay.
stuff. So like squats, deadlifts, leg press, that sort of thing.
Okay.
But really, like anything where you're placing demand on the bones, your body's gonna lay down more bone in response to make sure that it can withstand that demand, as long as it's a graduated increase in demand.
Okay.
Yeah,
don't
if
just
you
don't just try to.
right, yeah. I mean, considering like and again, especially unfortunately, our female athletes are more more susceptible to a number of things. But like for bony stress injuries, if you
Mm-hmm.
have somebody, we get it a ton in the summertime. Kids pick up with cross country and have it conditioned all summer, and immediately go out and start running way more mileage than they've done in months, and end up with usually it's tibial, so like your shin bone,
Yeah.
but it can present elsewhere. That's the more common one that we end up seeing. But yeah, if you it place too much demand too quickly, so too much too fast too soon is the thing that we hear a lot, then you can end up with issues, injuries related to that.
Okay. So that's what they say, the progressive overload.
Right, absolutely, yep.
Okay. Okay. And what was I gonna say? So, if you start working out before the age of 26, how much bone can you expect to possibly grow or have reinforced before you start to drop off?
I don't actually know. Now I'm not sure what the numbers are with that. That's just the benchmark that we were taught. So I'm sure you could probably find it, but
I'm sure.
I don't know. A bone health specialist, they would know.
And I can always Google. No, ask
Yeah, yeah,
AI.
absolutely. Yep.
Okay, so that's really cool. Now, of course, you grew up in fitness and things. So, what have you been doing now as a mom? What were you doing beforehand to, especially as an adult out of high school and things like that, to maintain your fitness?
Honestly, through high school, it was just what I was doing with sports for the most part. We did an off season, and probably starting at like 10 or 12.
Hmm.
We did some like general weight training courses with one of my travel softball teams. And then through high school, again, in off season, we did a strength and conditioning program through the winter, most winters. So that was kind of where I learned the foundation as far as working on cardiovascular fitness, working on strength training, basic compound movements, that kind of thing. But a lot of the rest of my general fitness was just, I played softball as primary sport and played basketball as well. So it was just what I was doing with practices with, through travel ball, we're practicing 3 to 4 days a week, gone almost every weekend playing. And then high school season, you're practicing every day except the weekend. So that was that was most of what I was doing. By college, I transitioned more over to just doing independent fitness stuff.
Okay.
So I was doing like running shorter distances between like 1 and 3 miles, that kind of thing. Cycling, and I always enjoyed strength training more, so that was primary focus. But
Yeah.
I did the other side just to try to be as well rounded as I can. I always loved playing outside as a kid, so there's a ton of that. Just with my parents, with my brother, we liked hiking, so it really just anything where we're out and moving, throwing a frisbee, jumping on a trampoline. I was a pretty active kid, and like I said, once you get college age, if you're not playing organized sports at that point, you can still do some pickup stuff. So like I did intramural, ultimate frisbee, basketball, flag football, but a lot of it was more just like independent strength training.
Okay. And yeah, that's very active. I also did like powder puff, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
It was just like a little prep and then a game and then like that was it typically.
Right.
So yeah, that's really cool. I mean, ultimate frisbee, I think I played that in the 8th grade, and that was super fun.
Yeah,
I've
it's a
never.
good time for sure.
So do you play like with those cages? And you throw in the cage, like you know what I'm talking about with the.
Mm-mm.
Okay, because we have a sports park by us, and I
Okay.
always wonder what those weird like. They're poles with like looks like, I don't know, maybe like a bird cage or whatever, and I found out that they throw their frisbee in there, and that's like
That's frisbee golf.
frisbee
Yeah,
golf. Okay,
yeah.
I was like, what? I see the frisbee going on.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
ultimate frisbee is where you just like pass it to your teammates and then get
Yeah,
to like the
ultimate
end
frisbee
zone.
is like a kind of like a combination between it's really like soccer but with a frisbee.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what
So
I
you,
thought. Yeah,
you
and then
try
you
to
get
get
to
it
the goal.
downfield and you score. There's effectively an end zone. I'm not actually sure what they call it, but you get past that point and you score. So
Okay.
when you have the frisbee, it's kind of like basketball in that case where you can pivot around on one foot, but you can't take
Mhm.
an additional step.
Mhm.
I think when you first catch it, you can decelerate, so you can take. I don't know what the rule is as far as how many steps, but like reasonable number to decelerate. But you can't like walk around with it.
Right, that makes
So
sense.
in order to advance, and you have to pass it to another one of your teammates.
Yeah, and I love that you have, put yourself in different sports. I've actually been seeing some women that I started following on like Instagram and stuff, and they have been getting into like adult organized sports. And I'm like, I think I might want to
Yeah.
look into that because, yeah, it's something that you can go. It's something that you can be social with, especially as a
Right.
mom. Sometimes we need a little bit of socialization, and then it keeps you fit and healthy.
Yeah.
And I really like that. Yeah. And
Absolutely.
so,
There pros and cons to it. So I did 2 adult leagues once I finished college.
hmm
I played in this area. It's called Club Waka, WAKA. I don't know if it's a national thing or not, but I played adult kickball, and then through a different group we played sand flag football, and both of those were really fun. But the adult leagues, maybe I just haven't found a great one, like a middle ground. But you tend to have either like really competitive, like, you know, grown ups screaming at each other when a call doesn't go their way, or you have people who are out there and it's purely an excuse to drink alcohol and socialize. And I really would like something that's
in the middle.
happy medium where it's a little bit competitive. People are trying, but we're not showing up on like Saturday morning at 8 a.m. already intoxicated. So yeah,
A happy medium would be
right, would be ideal. Yeah,
would be ideal because
yeah,
I wouldn't want that either. I stopped.
no. And the
I
same
stopped.
flag football was really fun. We had a great team. Everybody was pretty cool. Like everyone, got on the field and really put forth best effort. Some of the other teams were more in the hyper competitive, screaming at the volunteer ref. kind of thing. But our group, I think everybody was pretty cool about it. You know, we wanted to get out there and give it a good go, but people were reasonable adults, in my opinion, which was nice. But it was a little over an hour drive.
Oh.
And they just do, I think it's 2 tournaments a year. So it was just, especially coming into it postpartum, physically, I just did not totally feel ready to go back to that level of activity. And at this point, I probably won't go back and do it again. Again, it was really fun, but it's a lot of agility, a lot of quick direction changes, laying out for the ball, that sort of thing. And, we have another on the way, so obviously that's something that wouldn't be on the table as responsible activities. But then, even that is probably 8 to 10 months minimum before I would have felt ready to do something like that again. Once you get to 2 kids and beyond, it's just your life, you still get to have hobbies, of course, but your life is a little bit less your own. You're kind of living for a different purpose at that point,
Yeah, and which is lovely, but and as I think that as long as you do stay fit and things, there are still options when your kids get old enough. But anywho, how do you feel? Because you said that was postpartum. So how do you feel your previous history before having kids with strength training and everything? How do you feel like that has contributed to like your postpartum health, to your recovery, to you being able to get up on your feet again? Like how do you feel?
Well, so, I've only had the one labor and birth and everything so far. And then, unfortunately, we had to have a C-section for our son's well-being. So I only know that experience. And I know everybody that I have spoken to with more than one kid says that each labor, delivery, C-section, if that's how it ends up going, the recovery just varies so much. So I know for mine, I was really surprised, my immediate recovery at least. It went pretty well. My pain was really well controlled. I felt like I had done, first trimester was rough, just from an energy and like everything felt so heavy for lifting. So I scaled back a lot in my first trimester. Second trimester, I was able to kind of pick things back up and start moving a little bit heavier weight. And I dialed cardio back a little bit just because you start to get kind of big and heavy, and higher impact activities and that sort of thing just didn't feel like the smartest decision at the time. And then by third trimester, honestly, I was still moving decent weight. Your belly kind of starts to get in the way, of course. So like squats, deadlifts, I had to modify depth a bit. And then with deadlifts, I really had to drop weight back towards the end of third trimester. But overall, I felt like first pregnancy, I was really able to do a fair amount. First trimester was really the big one that just threw me for a loop. I didn't expect how exhausted I would be. And I thought I would really be able to maintain fitness until I got big. And to immediately just, I hit like 6 weeks and tanked. That was definitely a huge reality check, and extremely frustrating. And this go around, I expected it. So it was like, yeah, okay, this is par for the course. This is how it goes. But I felt like I was really, first trimester side, I was really able to maintain my fitness pretty well. Coming out of the C-section, you can't really use your abdomen very well. So like sitting up to get out of bed, bracing through your abs to stand up. But I felt like my lower body was strong enough, upper body was strong enough that it was pretty easy to compensate. I was more mobile than I expected, given what I'd heard from a lot of different people as far as C-section recovery. So I was really thankful for that. But man, it was months before any of the rest of my lifting started to feel kind of normal. And of course, I waited the recommended amount of time and was extremely gradual with getting back into activity. But honestly, even like 10 to 12 months lifting heavier, like for squatting and deadlifting, I just felt like my core control wasn't great. My timing, especially with the initial lift off the floor for deadlift, just felt off. And thankfully I was old enough and wise enough, I hope, that I was like, there's really no reason to rush it right now. Just take it slower. This is a period where I really need to extend myself grace. And I'm not a competitive lifter or anything like that. It's supposed to be for mental health, physical health, well-being, that sort of thing. So just really trying to lean into that part of it and change my expectations as far as like setting new PRs and that sort of thing. So it's just definitely a different approach. But like I said, circling back, I feel like it helped with my recovery in the short term, first 2-3 months for sure. But it was a little bit slower than I expected in the longer term, kind of getting back into things. And then even, coming into this pregnancy now, I did not get back to prior weights for like squatting and deadlifting primarily. I wasn't way off, but it just, I don't know. But some of it's a time thing, some of it's a fatigue thing, like breastfeeding. Gosh, it's it's a process, and it's so exhausting. You're literally giving your nutrients to another person. So I really tried hard to, again, step back and be like, this is, I want to stay fit, I want to stay healthy, because it's the more you lose with each subsequent pregnancy, the harder it is to get back to your baseline from before. So I didn't want to start with baby number 2 like way off from before, but just recognizing that like this is a different season of life, and maybe eventually I'll get back to that level, and maybe not. But my big thing at this point is I want to be able to stay active and healthy and feel good from a lifelong standpoint.
Yeah. So what was your PR before your first pregnancy?
For deadlift, it was 300, and for squats, I think it was 225.
Okay, and how
long?
long?
I don't think I ever hit 230, so it would have been 225. And it was just for a single rep, so it's not...
Okay, powerlifting? No.
You said what?
I said powerlifting.
Oh, yeah, and I never did any kind of like Olympic lifting or anything like that. So it was just like the big 3, squats, deadlifts, bench press were the big ones. And of course, focusing on all sorts of other supplementary lifts and other directions as well. But those were kind of the benchmarks that I used as far as my progress went.
Okay, and what was your bench press?
My best ever for bench was 145.
Okay.
I think. I hadn't done a PR attempt in a really long time there. I for sure used to do 135 for reps. But it's somewhere around there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know Michael's like, you don't need to do so much weight.
Yeah. I think that was definitely a learning process for me too. And you see all these people on social media, they like normal height, normal build, and just moving ridiculous weights.
Okay, but see, I've been learning more about the steroid use. So even though people can seem small or whatever,
right,
there could be some enhancements going
Absolutely.
on.
Yeah.
But I'm not trying to take away from people's progress or anything like that at all, just by assuming. But
also being realistic, of course.
Yeah. And you said you started lifting when you were 10 to 12?
So it was very intermittent at that age. That was basically like introductory, here's how to be safe in a gym. And we did, it was like a 6 or 8 week course maybe, again during the winter, where we went, at that point, I want to say it was like 2 days a week that we went to the YMCA. My parents have always been involved in some kind of fitness, so I got some stuff from them as well, as far as like how to approach things, how to work out generally. And then my brother in high school got really big into it, and that was one of the ways that I could still stay connected and bond with him. So at that point, we had a little setup out in our garage, and I would lift out there with him, and we go to the Y and lift together. So high school's where I started doing it a little bit more, but even then, sports were really priority. So it was in the off season when I had downtime, that kind of thing, but it wasn't something that I was really consistently doing at that age.
Okay, I see. And so what was your, like, what did you start lifting at? So you said your squat was 225, your deadlift was 300, and then what did you start lifting at, like trimester 1, and then what did you start lifting at postpartum when you started feeling safe to lift?
Yeah, so Gosh, first trimester, I had to cut weights so quickly. That was the first time out where I was just so frustrated. I don't remember what I had to take it down to, but it was, oh man, it was probably like 60% of that
Okay.
for each of them. Because I would get like 2, 3 reps in and just be completely winded. I'd finish my set and sit down, like gasping for breath. So at that time, I was still working out with my husband, and he doesn't get it. It's just fitness is not so much his thing. He kind of goes. It's a little bit of a social hour for him, and it's mainly so he stays semi-healthy. But as far as like the motivation side of things, setting personal goals, that sort of thing, it's just with weightlifting and general fitness really for him. That's just so not his personality. And so I remember him getting so frustrated with me. He's like, just, why are you doing this to yourself? You're literally growing another human. Just chill out. But like I said, I mean, I expected it third trimester, and it threw me for a loop for it to happen so early. So I seriously cut my weights then. Typically, my working sets for squats around that time were probably like 175, 185. So I was doing sets of like 5 to 8 reps in that zone. Week 6, 7, 8, somewhere around there. I was like fighting for my life at 135. So it was rough. I don't remember what I was doing for deadlifts, but it was something comparable where at that time, typically I was doing somewhere between 225 and 240 for my working sets. I probably dropped to 185, 205, something in that zone would be my guess. But again, I mean, it was like
good.
I finished my set and sat down on the floor and pondered my existence.
Why am I doing this?
Right, yeah, it was rough. Probably like halfway through second trimester, I worked back, not quite to my previous working sets, but pretty close, and just generally felt better about myself. And then third trimester, I scaled back really gradually then. So basically, as I felt like the weight was unreasonably hard, like you go in, some days you have really good days and you're like, man, this feels like nothing. Load me up. I could put more on. And other days you go in and it's just like, this is no weight. And it feels like somebody has intensified the gravity in this room. It feels so heavy. I can barely do it. It's like that. I really dropped it back. And then with deadlifts, sometime in third trimester, I started having issues with the initial pull from the floor where I was having mild incontinence. So that was a good indicator that I needed to chill out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I first started lifting, because, of course, you're way more seasoned than I am. But when I first started my program, I was having some mild incontinence. But the trigger session, so like I said, I strength train Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday. And then my trigger sessions in between that, you can choose between pelvic floor, abdomen, and glutes.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so you have like different light workouts in between.
Mm-hmm.
And doing the pelvic floor, I started doing the pelvic floor only.
Okay.
In the beginning, and then I like cycle through. So Monday I'll do abs, or I don't always stick it. It's always like I didn't feel like I burned my abs as much. But anyway, just to get to the point, I really appreciated the pelvic floor. It's really light. Like at first I was like, I'm not doing anything. No.
Right. You don't even feel like you're well, you go in with the mindset that I'm working out, and there are different types of workouts for sure.
Yeah. I was like, I'm not doing anything, but the incontinence has gone away, and so I know that I was doing something.
Yeah, with twins, it's just there's so much more. They take up so much more space. There's so much more weight on your pelvic floor.
Mm-hmm.
It's not unusual to have incontinence just with a singleton, but with twins, it's definitely another level.
Yeah, and I had incontinence while I was pregnant as well.
Yeah.
Too. So yeah.
I was very thankful that other than with deadlifts, and as soon as I dropped the weight back, I didn't have any issues with that in pregnancy.
Okay. Yeah.
And then I didn't have any problems with that postpartum. And it's really common. So I was so thankful not to have issues with that. I think, unfortunately, so many people see it as, oh, well, this is just a normal part of motherhood, of postpartum. And I mean, a significant percentage of women do experience it. So I understand to some degree that approach, but there's pelvic floor physical therapy that's available. And
Mm-hmm.
unless you already know that, you have a family member who tells you about it, and you're willing to advocate for yourself, that's not something that they offer as standard practice. Or
Mm-hmm.
honestly, in a lot of cases, I feel like they don't really even mention it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's getting more popular now, and I'm on the physical therapy side of things, so I guess I have a little bit different view. I'm not so sure like what your average woman going in for her 6 week postpartum check is getting, but I did not get much. I had a C-section. They didn't even look at my incision site. It was I was a little underwhelmed. um,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, I think in the postpartum period, we care so much about how the baby's doing, and unfortunately, the mother's health sometimes is kind of put to the back burner, or really
Mm-hmm.
not even addressed much at all.
Yeah. Yeah, like you said, you're a PT. I'm a massage therapist, so I don't know if that's also maybe why my algorithm is making it seem like a lot of women are becoming more
Yeah.
aware of pelvic floor. And I see like big fitness YouTubers that actually do like free fitness classes on YouTube that address pelvic floor for people. Grow with Joe, she's a good one, and she
Mm-hmm.
has had 3 C-sections as pelvic floor on there. And then Yoga with Adrian, I believe she has a whole series
Okay.
on pelvic
That's
floor
awesome.
things for
Yeah.
YouTube and stuff. So if people aren't getting it through their insurance or from their doctor recommending it, there are some
Mm-hmm.
really good options on YouTube.
Yeah.
I like the guide, like yoga with Adrian. She does a really good job with guiding
Mm-hmm.
you and like feeling like she's in the room.
Yeah. That's
Because I've
awesome.
been, yeah, I've been to different yoga classes, and I'm like, I have to keep opening my eyes or like looking around, like, what is she talking about? But
Right.
with Yoga with Adrian, I mean, she's been doing it for years on
Mm-hmm.
YouTube, and it's really good. So just for tips for people if
Yeah. Yeah.
they
Absolutely.
haven't had that.
Yeah.
But anywho, yeah, I would like sneeze. Oh my goodness,
That's
I'll never forget. I was on my oh, when we were getting married, we were like talking with my mom and stuff, and I was sitting on her bed, and like I sneezed and was so embarrassed. I didn't want to say anything, but I was like, I just peed.
yeah. It's thankfully I think people are more willing to talk about it now.
Mm-hmm.
It's still embarrassing,
Yeah, she was like, you
and
need to do your
it
Kegels.
shouldn't be, but nonetheless it is. Yeah, I remember at
Yeah.
one point one of my buddies, she had a rough pregnancy, just start to finish. She had so much morning sickness, so many issues with nausea and vomiting, and she would throw up so hard that she would pee herself. And I remember like watching this happen, and just I was very newly pregnant, and just like, oh my gosh, is this normal? Is this
Yeah.
what is this what's in store for me? And fortunately for my end, it wasn't normal, but man, feel bad for her. She had just a really rough go. And it's one of the things you have no idea how
Mm-hmm.
you'll respond, how it's going to go for you. And she's struggled, continued to struggle with that postpartum. And she has a very demanding career, takes up a ton
Oh.
of time, and just at this point, she's sort of embraced that, oh, I'm just going to be incontinent and it's not a big deal. And I tried to talk to her about, like, there are ways to address this, but I think you have to, in order to prioritize and make time for something, it has to be meaningful to you. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just, it's just not to her. So she wears the Thinks like period underwear when she works. Anything with impact. It's really just like impact activities. That's
Mm-hmm.
like stress incontinence, that kind of thing. Sneezing, coughing. So she can work around it. But I wish people would address the root of the problem. And it sounds like there are things that are available now. But it's
And
just
it and
not.
it's not like it's not a long time. Like I understand
Mm-hmm.
demanding and lack of people feeling like they have
Yeah.
lack of time. I mean, if you only have a little bit of time, maybe it will take longer to
Mm-hmm.
heal
Right.
than if someone has more time. But I mean, my trigger session is like, I don't know, 5 minutes
Right.
maybe. And you can do it at any time of the day. And then, Kegels. from what I'm understanding, is actually you don't want to be doing Kegels all the time. Like I've seen people do some
Hmm.
crazy Kegel things, and like this one is
Yeah.
just like just do 10 morning, noon, and night, hold for 3 to 5 seconds with each one, and that's it. And I have had drastic improvements, and I'm definitely with you on trying to lift
Yeah.
heavy and trying to really I've fallen in love with it. I mean, I haven't been doing it like I said as long as you, but
Hmm.
I have fallen in love. I mean, I get up at 5 in the morning, so I feel like you can't get up at that
Yeah.
time if you don't love something.
Right. Or
But
at
I
least
have,
like it.
yeah, I've fallen
Yeah.
in love with like progressing and seeing myself progress. I think the only time that I can't progress is on my cycle. I
Hmm.
typically stay at the weight I was the week before.
Yeah.
Um, that's like typically the only time I find myself being, or I even sometimes may have to even drop weight depending
Hmm.
on what day it is. I
Yeah.
cannot go if like I start my cycle on one of the days that I need to strength train. I honestly can't go. Um,
Hmm.
if it's the day that I've started, but like if I start Saturday, then I can go on Sunday. I'm just not as
Okay. Yeah.
strong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Female hormones are frustrating from a fitness standpoint. You just
Yeah.
honestly, I think if you go in and do your best, one of the things that I really liked that I heard ages ago is one workout isn't going to make you, but it can break you. So like if you're going in and working, obviously less so for like a your menstrual period, that kind of thing. But if you're going in and you feel like something's just kind of off today, something you feel like you tweak something a little bit, if you overdo it on one day, you can set yourself back for a long time. So
Hmm.
that was something that was kind of helpful for me because I used to, like, if I had a mild injury, I would get frustrated and just be like, well, I'm just gonna power through, and that's so dumb.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I was more of like a late teens, early 20s kind of thing, and I learned my lesson. But I think really the biggest thing is your outcomes are the sum of your consistent efforts. So if you have one bad day, even if it's one bad day a month, if you're
Hmm.
consistent the rest of the time, it's gonna show. So.
Yeah. And what do you recommend like warm-ups look like when you, especially as we get more mature, we need to make sure we warm up. I typically will get on the treadmill for 10 minutes and then I'll do some light mobility stuff, but like what,
Mhm.
from a PT standpoint, what do you find is
Yeah.
good warm-ups?
So as far as warm ups go, I mean, it's really whatever gets you to feel prepared for the movement and the weight or the activity that you're about to do, uh, which is such a it depends answer. But realistically, I don't want my patients or anybody else just generally going to the gym. I don't want your mobility and warm up to take so long that it feels cumbersome. It should be, again, just enough to get you to where you feel like you're prepared to do the activity. Honestly, for somebody who's healthy and hasn't really had any issues with whatever lift it is, they've got good mobility with it. I mean, you can realistically do a very specific warm up of I start this movement light and then gradually add weight until I'm at my working sets. For somebody that has a history of injury or like say for squats you really struggle with depth because your ankle mobility is bad or your hip mobility is bad, it's something in those cases. I think part of it is your goals, right? So like if your ankle mobility is not great and you struggle to hit depth, if you're not training to be a competitive lifter and you don't have to hit a certain depth, there's nobody that says that you have to get your squats hips level with knees. Obviously, for most people, that's kind of the goal. But if your goal is to get in there and get stronger and be healthy, and you don't really care about hitting full depth, and you're doing three-quarter depth squats, is it really a big deal? And if for that person it is a big deal, then sure, we want to do mobility stuff or have compensations where they're either in a shoe with a heel lift or they have their heels elevated on a plate or they can hit depth a little bit better. And then you care more about spending the time to try to work towards that end position. But if your client, is or patient or whatever is 60 years old and they're like, hey, I just want to be able to get off the toilet and get up the stairs as far into my older years as I can, does it really matter?
Yeah, yeah.
So And if you're doing more explosive, really heavy activities, things that are competitive where you do have to hit certain marks for your lift to qualify, then a little bit more thorough warm up, focusing on your deficits, I would say is the big thing. So like,
Okay.
for me, for deadlifts, I feel pretty good with deadlifts. There's not a lot that I have to do. I go through probably like a 2 minute basic mobility, for low back, for hips, and then just start loading the bar. I've had more history of instability with my shoulders, so I do a little bit longer warm up, especially in like the bottom position for bench with bar. So I do a little bit more warm up with stabilizers through my shoulders, spend a little bit more time making sure I'm comfortable at depth with a lighter weight before I start to add weight onto the bar. So it's really just depending on your history and what you prioritize. But I don't want to warm up to take more than 5 to 10 minutes. And as far as you mentioned, like the general cardio for warm up, there's really not good evidence that helps with injury prevention.
Okay.
But as far as like, hey, you're getting up at 5 in the morning and you're still dragging your feet and exhausted, sometimes it's something that we have to do just to get our mindset, where it needs to be.
Yeah.
So it's our wake up to be ready to do the workout itself, not so much the individual movement or activity for whatever your day is.
Okay, that makes sense. 'Cause I think, yeah, like mentally, I like warming up on the treadmill just for that 10 minutes, just to kind of, like you said, get my mind going. And then I also, I don't have a lot of time, because I have to make sure I get back to the kiddos. But what I do, I just do a light, let's say my last working set or where I hit my heaviest weight was, I don't know, let's just do small number or 100, right? Then I'll warm up at 50 and I'll do like 10 reps or 15 reps depending on, and then I'll start to load up. And I only do like one warm up set because I don't have a lot of time.
Well, and when you're a little bit newer to the motions and everything too, you're going to get strength improvements anyway, just from a neurological standpoint. The beginner gains are very encouraging.
Yeah,
for sure.
My husband says that all the time. He's like, "You're gonna get those newbie gains."
Yeah, which I mean, it's great because it gets you in the routine. It gets you in the habit. It helps you feel like you're accomplishing something. It can be hard when you hit your first couple plateaus and you're not really having that, especially as a natural lifter. And then, unfortunately, the reality of it is for female lifters, our hormones are just not set up to be as beneficial from a strength improvement side of things. So it's just, you definitely hit the tough spots. But I think, once you've gotten that routine, and I think really, especially if you have a more well-rounded approach to this is for my long-term fitness and my mental health, right? Like almost always, even if I really didn't feel like going to the gym, once I leave, I just feel like mentally everything is clearer. I feel more relaxed. Things that were causing anxiety or stress or frustration, I just feel a lot more even. So when you hit some of those things where, okay, maybe I'm not setting new records, or maybe I'm frustrated as far as like what my numbers look like, falling back on the other aspects of, hey, fitness is not just that side of it. It's all these other things, and embracing how that sort of stuff is making you feel better too. In those tougher periods can be helpful.
Yeah, I think for me, I look at the numbers in regard to like, I want to be able to lift my body weight on a deadlift. I want to be able to, like, I've always said, like, my goal is to be able to do a pull-up, because I'm like, I like hiking and stuff, I'm like, if I'm ever falling, I'm gonna die. No. I am done. I am not living. That is it. And I'm like, how awful, you can't even get yourself up one time. Like, you know what I mean? So those are the things that I'm like striving for, is like functionality and things. And then I know you mentioned with mobility. So of course, grandpa wants to be able to get off the toilet. Grandma wants to be able to get off the toilet. But for us, in terms of my audience is like 25 to 35 or something like that.
Right.
I believe in full ROM, full range of motion, for as long as possible. So do you feel the same way? Like, especially getting down on the floor with your kids and then getting up and things like that. That's kind of why I look at, like, I really want to be able to get into full depth for as long as possible.
Yeah, so I mean, I care about it, but I think it really depends what you do. I mean, getting down on the floor, getting off the floor, there's so many ways that you can do it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like you can still do those activities for a really long time, even if you don't have full range of motion. I can sit in a squat. I was catcher forever for softball, so I basically like lived in a squat position growing
Yeah.
up. So I can get to a squat position with my heels resting on the floor and just camp out there. I don't think most people spend that amount of time there or can even get into that position in the first place. So again, I think it boils down to what you care about. I mean, maybe you can't squat in that position, but can you lunge to the floor? Because if you can lunge and get a knee to the floor, you can easily get the rest of the way down onto the floor that way.
That's true.
And if you can lunge, you can pick your kid up, prop them on a knee, then put them on your hip and stand up. So there are lots of ways to work around it. I think for me, I didn't really want to have to compensate. I didn't want to have to think about, okay, what strategy do I use to do this activity? I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
have enough strength and mobility to just do it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then, growing up again, sports and outdoor activity and play and everything, it was just such a big deal to me. I want to be able to do that stuff with my kids as long as possible. And I joke, my husband's not super outdoorsy and he played sports, but it was just like a thing to do growing up. And, I was playing travel sports from the time I was 10 onward, and it was just a bigger part of my life. And so I joke with him that half the reason I wanted to have kids is so I'd have somebody who would play outside with me. So I want to be able to like throw a ball and not feel like my shoulder's falling off, and
Yeah.
swing a bat and other stuff too. Like I split firewood for our fire pit out back. I want to be able to do that sort of stuff, have that rotational power, and
Mm.
feel healthy with it, and not spend the next week in pain. I just want to be able to do what I need to, and again, not really have to strategize because I'm well rounded enough that okay, I can handle this activity. And of course, you have to be smart about it, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I would like to be able to get up and down and throw a ball and do all those sorts of things, jump on a trampoline and not worry. I think is the bigger thing.
That makes sense. Do you feel that when you go to the gym and you do progressive overload and you do full body and stuff like that, do you feel that that will always translate to being able to swing an axe and cut wood and trampoline and things like that? Or do you feel those things still need to also be part of your at least semi-frequent activities that you do?
Yeah, so it's a lot of the stuff at the gym is straight plane movements in a very controlled manner, and a lot of play activities are the exact opposite of that.
Yeah.
um, so as far as like if I were to go out, and I don't do anything like this right now, but if I were to go out and play pickup soccer with, if it's with a little guy, like you're not going super hard, right? You can
Right.
jog, and you don't have to be real aggressive with the direction changes. I mean, once your kids get to be probably 12 plus, especially for the higher level athletes, it's different. And I think kind of recognizing what your limitations are, or like not even necessarily a physical limitation, but where is the smart endpoint for me right now, given where my fitness is?
Mm-hmm.
And if you recognize, okay, it's probably not the smartest idea for me to go out and do a 100% effort, hard cut right now, then I would probably do some things to help address that. So if I've just been doing light jogging and I haven't sprinted in a while, I'm not going to go out and straight out of the gate do a sprint because that's that's a good way to hurt yourself. But over a couple weeks, I gradually build the intensity and try to work back towards that sort of movement. Yeah, so I think for the gym is a great foundation, but it's not the same to a lot of those more agile, more explosive movements. And I think you have to continue to do some of those things to be able to do them safely long term.
And when do you feel like is it at the 26 mark where you feel the body needs to have practice in like sprinting? I mean we've all seen people be like, "Oh, I can race you, I can race you," and they're a little
Yeah.
bit more mature in age. They go to run and like, ah, you know. So
Yeah.
what age is it that 26 mark, or is it
So the
is it
26 mark, to my knowledge, is just for females, just related to bone health.
Okay,
And
okay.
obviously it's a range, right? That's like, this is what the average is. So some people the rate's a little slower, some people the rate's a little faster. But yeah, as far as like being able to sprint, I think one of the really important things to recognize is how few people actually sprint beyond the age of probably 25,
Mm-hmm.
um, maybe 30, right? Like, so if you haven't done it in 5 years or 10 years, it is such an explosive movement. I don't think it's necessarily so much the age thing, it's just complete and utter disuse of those systems.
Right.
So for somebody who's still regularly getting out and sprinting, you're more prepared to do that. The springiness from a tendon standpoint, you're still working those systems. A lot of people don't even work like plyometrics at the gym, which I get it. You're on time constraint, you're doing the part that you care about, and if your goal is like, I want to lift my kid off the floor, like, you don't need plyos to lift your kid off the floor.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're looking to go out and do a new sport, so maybe you haven't done any sports at all, you haven't done any kind of sprinting, any kind of jumping, any kind of direction changes in 15 years, and you would go out and pick up pickleball, it might be smart to spend some time preparing yourself for the types of movements that you'll have to do.
Okay, that
So
makes sense.
again, like I want as much as I can. I don't work so much with older population, but for me, it's more kind of an anti-fragile approach. So I want you to be able to do as much as you can for as long as you can in the activities that are meaningful to you. But I think to some degree, as we get older, I mean, age certainly is a factor for our physical fitness and capabilities, but just recognizing like, what is my foundation right now? What have I been working on, and what do I need to work on to prepare myself for this? And I mean, it's tough, if you're not a physical therapist or you haven't really been involved in fitness or that sort of thing. I think the resources are out there, but anything gym and fitness related, there's also a lot of pseudoscience and bro science out
Mm-hmm.
there.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't really have a background in it, sometimes it's hard to parse through all the nonsense and find the quality. And I don't think most laymen want to sit down and read a bunch of peer-reviewed journal articles. It's like,
Yeah.
I want a quick and dirty from somebody who, has a good background in this to figure out how to do this safely. So I appreciate their challenges to it for sure.
Yeah. And then as we transition, what would be your number one tip to someone who, especially a mom, postpartum, uh, lost herself, maybe
Mm-hmm.
needs to shed a few pounds? I can be the avatar, never really knew anything about strength training and the importance of it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what do you recommend they start? How do they get started and get on a right track to lose weight and get more fit?
Yeah. I think the two biggest factors in my mind for somebody who's overall just trying to be healthier
Mm-hmm.
is you have to find activities that you preferably enjoy, but at least don't hate, right? So if
Mm-hmm.
you absolutely hate running, every minute that you're out there is torture, it's the worst thing that you do, it's just not going to be a sustainable activity for you. So if you like riding the bike, if you like swimming, if you like strength training, whatever it is, try a bunch of different stuff and see what feels like the best fit. Otherwise, you're just going to end up yo-yoing. You come in, you have high motivation and you work really hard, and then you have an off week or you're feeling kind of down. It's just going to be hard to power through an activity that you absolutely despise doing. So
Mm-hmm.
find stuff, whatever it is, whether it's, an adult league for sports or it's cardio, it's strength. Find something that you can tolerate doing. And then, like, from the diet nutrition standpoint, same thing, it has to be sustainable changes. So if you have a complete sweet tooth and every night you come home and you eat a pint of ice cream, if you just totally cut that out, which, maybe that's the long-term goal, but if you just totally cut that out cold turkey straight out of the gate, when things get difficult or that motivation wanes, or, you just get kind of bored of the process, it's going to be really hard to maintain those changes. So I think trying to find goals that are sustainable in the long term, like, okay, so maybe instead of a pint of ice cream, I have a half a pint of ice cream. I still get that flavor that I like. I still have this activity, and trying to find substitutes that are acceptable to you,
Mm-hmm.
depending on your personality, that sort of thing. But yeah, it's got to be gradual over at least months, probably years, in my opinion, to where, okay, this is my new routine, and now I change the next little part of it stepwise. Otherwise, it's just impossible to maintain.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with small steps and doing things that you like. I mean, I have a sweet tooth and
Mm.
I also like to bake. So basically, what I do is I
Double
just
whammy.
like, you're right. I'm like, I just cut my sugar,
Hmm.
and I look for alternative recipes. I have so many alternative recipes
Yeah,
on from like Instagram and stuff that are super yummy, but way better for you
yeah,
in regard to the sugar content and things like that. And then I've seen people who are really into ice cream and like they make their own ice cream, like protein ice cream. So it's like protein, it's low calorie, it's.
yeah,
So there's definitely alternatives to the things that we like. And I
yeah,
really like that. Small steps. I preach in that because I
yeah.
wouldn't have been able to even get to where I'm at without
Hmm.
small steps. Trying to just change completely overnight is just, like you said, not sustainable.
Yeah, yeah. And I think one of the other big things is the saying comparison is the thief of joy, right? So if
Mm,
you're looking at these fitness models or these bodybuilders or whoever else it may be, and I mean, heck, maybe they're mothers also, maybe they work full time, but their story is not yours.
mm-hmm.
And their priorities are different from yours. And I think if you can look at them as a source of motivation, sure, do your thing. But if you find that you're watching those sorts of things and all it is discouraging and it's negative for your mental health, don't look at somebody else as the benchmark. Look at, like you talked previously about taking progress photos, and compare yourself to your previous self.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if you're making progress from that, even if it's slow, it's still progress.
Yeah.
And then I guess one of the other things I would caution too is for mothers in the postpartum period, healing and recovery are so important. You're in a period of, for most of us, probably the lowest quality sleep of your life and the
Mm-hmm.
lowest duration sleep of your life. If you're breastfeeding, again, you're taking all of those nutrients that in that immediate period you would hope would go towards healing, and you're giving them to somebody else, which is great and it's beautiful, but it's hard.
Yeah.
And then, the hormones related to that postpartum period too, especially if you're breastfeeding. Sometimes weight loss just can't be the immediate goal. And I
Mm-hmm.
understand it's frustrating, but in my mind at that stage, my child's well-being was number one, and I didn't want to completely disregard my own needs, but it's just really, it's a different season of your life, and extending grace to yourself. Think of like what you would do to a friend or a close family member in that situation, the way that you would respond to them, and try your best to respond that way to yourself. Because for a lot of us, we're our own biggest critics, and our internal voice is not usually as nice as it would be towards someone else that we care a lot about. So
Yeah.
I think, being able to say those sorts of things to yourself, step back and get some perspective on, maybe it's frustrating that this isn't progressing the way that I would hope. What are my priorities? And for the most part, am I meeting them? I mean, it's hard to strike that balance. And again, everybody is so different. I definitely work out less often than I did before, a little less intensely. My weights are lower. My cardio is not as aggressive. Um, but I work a super active job, and I'm not really extroverted at all. And in a higher energy, kid oriented career, you kind of have to be.
Mm-hmm.
So it's trying to be 100%, or at least up as much as possible, to give the kids a good experience, and have them like feel engaged in the process, and want to try and put forth their best effort. That's all day for my work day. And then I've got a 2-year old at home, trying to be energetic and play with him and be there for him, and focus and pay attention. There are a lot of other demands in life now that I never had before,
Mm-hmm.
with having my own kid at home. Once I get home from work, I used to get home and just like kind of unwind, and I could focus on myself, and I could not talk the whole rest of the night, and that was fine. Nobody cared.
Mm-hmm.
But adding a husband and then adding a kid of my own, it's just mentally there's a lot more constantly in the background, or people that I have to show up for beyond just myself. And I think you have to fill your cup enough that, you can provide for other people. But in my mind, I'm not number one anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make sure that I stay healthy, but I am not my number one priority. And if some of the things that I cared a lot about before are not primary goals anymore, that's just, again, it's in my mind, that's this season of life, and being able to step back and recognize it as, okay, I'm doing what I can in as many areas as I can. It's not that I'm failing at everything, it's that there's only so much energy and time, physical and mental energy, that I can put out there, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just going different places now.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you saying that. And like you said, it's hard, but it's a new season
Mm-hmm.
and we're just trying to find a balance. And it seems that you've been able to put yourself in a position where you've been able to balance, you have your work, you have your things that you like that help fill your cup, and then when you get home and you understand that you also have your kid and your husband, and that's really all I feel like we can do is
Yeah.
just like know that and talk
Mm-hmm.
to ourselves and just be like, all right, this is what I'm doing now, and be present in that moment. And then,
Right.
yeah.
Day to day too. Some days you feel really good about it. You're like, man, I'm out here crushing it,
Yeah.
meeting everybody's needs, including my own. Like, this is amazing. And other days you wake up and start the day exhausted and just
Mm-hmm.
feel like you fall short in every area. And it's just, again, extending yourself grace and recognizing that,
Yeah.
like, I'm not going to feel great every day, and I'm going to have
Yeah.
bad days. And, some days maybe I get out there and move a little bit, and some days maybe I just take the day off. I was supposed to
Mm-hmm.
do these things, and you know what? I'm just going to not today. So that definitely, I think if I had kids younger in life, like my early 20s, that would have been so much harder. Just mentally, I feel like I'm matured a lot going into my 30s, especially. And it's hard to take a step back, and and even then, probably like 6 to 8 months postpartum, it just, motherhood is a marathon. It adds up, and it's not like any individual activity. If you have a neurotypical kid who's within, I don't know, like a standard deviation of normal baby child behavior, I don't think there's really any one thing that's crazy hard to deal with,
Mm-hmm.
but it never stops.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so sometimes it adds up and kind of weighs on you. And again, like, recognizing, okay, maybe I need to take a step back, or maybe dad gets a little more time with kiddo today.
Yeah.
It's just making sure that you recognize what you can do to make it sustainable. And of course, having kids is absolutely awesome. I love them so much. We do so many fun things, and seeing them learn and grow and develop, it's so rewarding.
Yeah, of course.
But it's tough. You
Yeah.
never, even when you have a break mentally, I just feel like I'm always constantly going through, like, okay, well, what else do we need? What do we need to pick up from the store? What activity are we going to do tomorrow? There's just always a bunch of other tabs open mentally that were not there before. So it's just a little bit more exhausting for sure.
Yeah, I think sometimes I try to come at life like kids thrived and they excelled back in the day, and
Mm-hmm.
life wasn't as complicated as it is now. And I understand, like, introducing your kids to certain things that are going to put them ahead, possibly. But at the same time, like, I mean, kids were still learning multiple languages back in the day. Kids were
Mm-hmm.
still being creative and innovative and all the things with simplicity. And I'm really trying to steer away from like over consumerism and stuff. So like sometimes I
Mm-hmm.
feel like, am I being too simple? Should I be doing more? But I'm really trying to lean into like simplicity, because man, like planning all the activities and doing all that beyond like
Yeah.
going to the zoo or, all
Right.
that, it's like really hard. But I was told that it's easier to do activities when they're like 2 and
Mm-hmm.
older. So I think right now I just need to chill out. But I mean,
Yeah.
overstimulation and having two is just, it's a lot. Anyway,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. It's a
Yeah.
lot for us
Honestly,
all.
I since he consolidated to a single nap, everything just got a lot easier. Once we got
Mm-hmm.
into potty training, it was more difficult again for a stretch. There's just more planning involved with that.
Yeah.
But definitely,
I'm
like,
not ready.
when yeah. You wait as long as you need to. Kids get there in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it got easier. I know that there are struggles once you hit 2 and 3 emotionally. Kids are, want to be more independent and start to have more opinions and start to have bigger feelings when things aren't going their way. So I'm sure we'll hit more of those struggles, but I think every age has its really beautiful moments and its difficult moments.
Yeah, of course.
So as much as I can, I don't want to not do the thing because it's, oh well, it's going to be tough, but also I don't want to overextend myself, and for a lot of parents, I think really want to feel like they're giving everything they can, every opportunity they can to their kids. And for the most part, realistically, I think if you're present and you love your kid and you incorporate them into your daily life, you're doing great.
And I heard that boredom
Yeah,
is really good for your kids. It's good for their imagination and things like that. So,
people are intolerant of boredom. I mean, you'll see it. Somebody sits down for 2 seconds and they're gonna have a delay and immediately on their phone, reading through something, playing a game. And again, there are pros and cons to everything, right? Like, it's great that we have these things we can do, but I think having the ability to sit in silence and recognize peaceful situations and take boredom and either use it to come up with something new and fun to do or just embrace it as like, hey, I have a little bit of quiet downtime where I can reflect and relax. I definitely agree there's something to be said for that. For me, like in high school, I felt very overscheduled, which was part of the reason I had absolutely zero interest in pursuing varsity level sports in college. I'd been playing travel ball again since I was 10 and just didn't really have a lot of time to do random activities, have other hobbies, have other interests, hang out with other friends. And it was fine. Like, I loved it while I was doing it. All of my best friends were from my travel team. I wouldn't change the way that I did it, but it was tiring. And when I finally got to kind of take a step back from that, and even if I didn't replace it with another activity or something productive, just to have some time to myself to relax and unwind, it was definitely refreshing. So I think the same thing can be said for for all these kids out here right now. You have so much really early sports specialization or like kids going into music or art or whatever it is, and sometimes it's self-motivated. And if that's the case, I mean, I'm a very strong proponent of you can kind of help to guide your child, but to some degree they are who they are, and the goal, I think, as a parent is to let them blossom into whoever they're meant to be. I don't want to sculpt them into what I think they should be. I want to help provide guidance and let them be who they're supposed to. So, if you've got a kid who's a little more free-spirited and not super into organized activities, maybe do a couple here and there so that they can learn to be part of a group and learn to be on time and stick to a schedule and that sort of thing. There's skills that come from it. But maybe we do like one of them and let them kind of pursue their other interests. And if you've got a kid who's extremely routine oriented, they really thrive on that. They thrive on competition. They thrive on just hyperfixating on whatever thing they're good at or attentive to. Just, giving them the opportunities that they're interested in and helping them to grow and be as well-rounded as possible, I think. It's helpful for long term, but every kid is so different. Every parent-kid dynamic is so different. So it's figuring out what's a good balance and what works for you guys. It's not like, here it's
not
answer choice C, right? Like, it's you learn together, you grow together, hopefully, and hope that you provide the best you can for your kids, but still let them grow up and be an individual.
No, I completely agree with that. I mean, it's hard, like you said, because everyone is so different. Every child is so different. Every single person is their unique person, and they all have their own direction and path that they're supposed to take. And I think the biggest thing that what I'm discovering, I mean, in my short 20 months of parenting, but I think what my thing that I've gathered is to pay attention to your children, listen to your children, get to know your children. And I think all of the other things, all the other chips will fall if you give your children that space to talk and, like you said, be themselves. Hopefully that'll show you like, okay, yeah, they're really into this, and they don't notice that they mention this all the time. So that, like you said, guide them towards the things that are really the things that they are supposed to do. I'm losing my train of thought, but I completely understand where you're coming from, and we're not
Yeah.
therapists and things to be like, well, you said,
Right.
hopefully I can get it right in some way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So just two more questions. They're brief
Yeah.
questions. So what advice would you give to someone who wants kids but feels like they would be giving up on their career?
Man, that's hard. Again, I think every person is so different. Every couple is so different. So like my friend who I don't even know how many hours she works, but she's is part of a family business and she works crazy hours. Is super committed to her career. Her big thing was really find a partner who recognizes and respects and hopefully even appreciates that about you and is willing to be supportive of that. I think in a lot of cases, the balance is shifting a bit, but in a lot of cases, I think when it comes to child rearing, mothers kind of just take over a dominant role with it. And so recognizing, am I the type of person where I'm going to feel very strongly that I do the caretaking things or that it's done a very particular way? Or can I take a step back and trust my partner to handle it? Or am I cool with, my kid going to a daycare and having somebody else play a really active role in how your child is raised and what experiences they have. So I think kind of thinking through those things beforehand and making sure that you pick a partner who is compatible with what those goals are.
Mm-hmm.
Your partner is the only family member that you choose, and it should be a really big decision, especially if you're looking at starting a family, and extra especially if career is really important to you, or if you're looking at being a stay-at-home mom. Again, having a partner who's supportive of that and making sure you've had those conversations beforehand so there aren't any surprises and that you've got things set up to the best of your ability where that's a viable option, whatever end of the spectrum is. I think really just thinking through as many of those aspects as you can possibly imagine before can be very helpful. So like for me, I love what I do for a job. My career mattered to me, but it wasn't, I wanted to do a good job and I wanted to serve my patients well, but it certainly wasn't my primary focus. It wasn't a huge part of my identity. And to me, I wanted to be home a little bit more with my kids, and I cared about being very present and very active in their upbringing. So I don't think I could have really done a full-time job, or particularly a full-time job with a lot of extra hours. Like some physicians are working like 60 plus hours a week. I mean, there's stuff like that, like in all sorts of careers, in construction, when you guys are in season, like you're working tons of hours then and just coming home dog tired and not really having the energy to show up for your family other than, financially what you're able to provide. I couldn't have done something like that. I think recognizing that for my personality. But some people can, like it works for them. They feel so much fulfillment from what they do with their career. And if you're okay with your child spending more time in daycare and after school programs and that sort of stuff, that can be a really good fit for your family and for your life. So just being realistic and honest with yourself about, okay, what are my priorities and what range of options are acceptable to me when it comes to parenting and having kids, and what role my partner plays and how much money we bring home, or like for my husband and I, financially, we don't really have many expensive interests. That makes it easier. Like, of course it'd be fun to travel, but it's not a huge part of something that motivates me or something that I derive joy from. But for other people, they do want to have a really nice car or a nice pool, be able to go on cool vacations. So again, like just all of those different facets, trying to recognize what do I actually care about, to what degree do I care about it, and how can I set myself up to be most satisfied with the balance of work and home life, kids, hobbies, interests, all that sort of stuff. And everyone's is so different.
Yeah. Okay, so lastly, what advice would you give to the new mom who feels overwhelmed by the pressures of work and home life?
Again, I mean, it's been kind of a common theme, extending yourself grace, talking through it with people you care about, potentially if you have an understanding boss or coworker, somebody else who has a career that's kind of similar to yours. And like, what did you do? How did you cope with this? How do you feel like you rebounded from this? really, if you have a supportive boss, I think that can be very helpful, because you can say, hey, these are the things that I'm really struggling with right now, or I feel like I'm falling short in this area. I feel like mentally I'm just not operating as efficiently as I did before, whatever the case may be. Because sometimes it's, we have our internal experience, but other people from the outside aren't necessarily seeing the same thing that we're feeling. So I definitely early on coming back to work, I just felt like everything took longer. Mentally, I just wasn't as sharp. I felt like I couldn't multitask as well, and I felt like it was obvious, and it definitely was challenging. Just mentally, it was really frustrating to feel that way. And in one of my reviews with my boss, I mentioned that, and he's like, honestly, I haven't noticed it at all. So I'm sorry that you feel that way, but just realize that, looking at the quality of your work and your interactions and how things are going here, I have not seen any of that. So sometimes it's not to be dismissive and be like, oh, it's all in your head, because, your experience is your experience, of course. But sometimes getting that outside perspective, you can recognize that it's not as bad as I feel like it is.
Yeah, no, definitely be open to communication and be honest with yourself and the people around you. I really like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, again, like with your spouse, with your family, with your friends, having those conversations of like, hey, I feel like I haven't been there for you. I feel like I'm not able to show up in the ways that I did before. Where do you feel like I'm falling as far as your expectations go? Do you feel like these have been reasonable compromises based on, especially like with your spouse, based on our current life situation? Or is there any stuff that's been weighing on you that, like, okay, maybe I'm doing this thing that you don't care that much about, but this other thing, I'm not really meeting your needs in this domain, and you wish I would put a little more energy there. So I feel like, the communication's just the biggest thing to gain some perspective. And I mean, it doesn't have to be with a person. Some people journal and parse through their thoughts that way and reflect and grow and prioritize. But I definitely think recognizing, like, everything cannot be a number one priority. You cannot put 100% of yourself into everything that you're involved in, because there's so much more going on now.
Yeah.
And it's hard when you have all those things where, like, okay, every one of these should feel like a priority. And I mean, to some degree, of course, it still is, but it's just not possible to do everything in the way that you did before children. So just extending some grace. And again, recognize when we talk to you about, like, this is a season, your kids are going to get more independent. Eventually, they're going to go to school, or going to be doing, like an online program of some sort, or just pathway you're doing. They're eventually going to be doing more on their own. They're going to be feeding themselves 1 or 2 meals a day, bathing themselves, eventually, doing their own transportation, right? Like, it's occupying themselves, doing their own hobbies. So eventually, from that standpoint, it will get easier. You'll have more time to yourself. And, again, the teenage period has other struggles around it, right? Like, you're present in different ways. But this period where you're really doing everything for somebody is not actually that long in the grand scheme of things. It's not that long of a period, 100%. So eventually it'll circle back, but to not feel like you've lost yourself during that time period, man, it's definitely tough.
I mean, I definitely feel like I did, but I'm finding my way back. So
Yep.
So as we close this, I just want to say thank you so much, Anna. I feel like I learned so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me and share your knowledge. It was fruitful. I really appreciate that.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, because Mothering Holistically is here to amplify everyday moms' voices, creating a relatable space to share stories, practical tips, and inspiration. We empower moms to embrace every season of motherhood with confidence and pursue their dreams with resilience. And as a new mom myself, I truly, truly appreciate the tips and the stories of other moms, and it is my hope that, others will too. So just like Anna, if y'all feel comfortable to chat with me and share your story, I would love to hear it. You can connect with me at Kaylee Berlini, and there's also a jot form just to briefly fill out if you want to be contacted to be on the show. It's in the description box below. And then you can follow me again at Kaylee Berlini on all social media platforms. Follow the podcast at Mothering Holistically on Instagram and Facebook. And then if you have any stories that you want to share just over social media, tag us, Mothering Holistically. And if you like this episode and feel it resonates resonated with you, please give it a thumbs up by clicking that like button. It really helps us out. And if you feel it could encourage anyone, feel free to share it. And also subscribe while also hitting that notification bell to never miss a weekly episode. Until next time, remember to mother holistically and thrive authentically. I'm your host, Kaylee, and together we're winning. Bye, y'all.